Eating mushrooms isn't doing drugs, dumbass. It's a food. All foods make you feel differently, contain different compounds. Nightshade vegetables have a bunch of nicotine in them. Bananas have potassium. Is that doing drugs because different foods make you feel differently? And in the video, I said I haven't done any hallucinogenics in a year and a half since I had these spiritual experiences, so I can better make sense of them. I am so tired of you pretentious Christian assholes parading around like the Bible is an accurate source of history. It is clear manipulation, and you're not listening to the messages. You're reading the words. Your whole page is just taking people expressing themselves and then just going, no Bible quote, no Bible quote. Get out of here. You're promoting idol worship. You're doing exactly what it says not to do. There's a real important thing going on right now, if you haven't noticed, in Israel, all about the Old Testament and the inheritance of the tribes of Israel. What are the tribes of Israel? Nobody knows. Matthew, book of Matthew, name was Levi. Levites from Levi are the one who are called on by Moses to slaughter their neighbors. Slaughter their neighbors. Moses on Sinai, getting the 10 Commandments, comes back. Oh, crap. Everybody's worshiping the golden calf. That's what you've turned Jesus into. That's not what Jesus is. That's what you've turned him into. And it's going to come back to bite you in the ass. And I'm trying to help out. The Jews are telling you, there's videos all over social media. They want a nuclear war. They want to kill most of the world. And you're not paying attention. Now that I got that out of the way, let's talk about some facts. This version of Jesus you're suggesting everyone must bend a knee to in worship is a demigod. Doesn't even fit a human description. You have Mother Mary as a human, impregnated by God, gives birth to Jesus, who has magical miracle healing abilities, is God or God's son, and then can be murdered by other humans and just allows it. And the disciples just sit by and watch and let it happen. And then, okay, Jesus existed before Abraham was born, died, came back, was taken into heaven, reappears as an apparition to Paul, and we're waiting for the second coming. If we worship, we'll get saved in the second coming. Does that make sense to you? Why is it that God sends an angel to intervene when Abraham goes to kill Isaac, but not all the other kids? When all the other kids and little children of the world, innocent babies in mothers' stomachs that are ripped from the womb, God doesn't intervene there, right? What? And again, I'm saying, yes, God, no to this idealistic version. This Christian idol worship that you're promoting is Antichrist, okay? Not like you're Antichrist, no. As in, that's what the character represents in the story. There's many Antichrists then, there's many Antichrists now. It's someone who's promoting idol worship. And that's what you're doing. Don't think, just submit. God's will, you'll be saved. Don't worry. Get out of here. It's insulting to my intelligence to think that that is an accurate recount of history as it's interpreted today. You have many other scholars throughout history who have suggested wildly different interpretations of the text. They found them. They didn't write them. And the only possible conclusions that they could make is that they were handed to them by God, because they couldn't possibly fathom that something existed there before them. So, oh my goodness, look at these gifts we've been given. Look at these cathedrals and pyramids. They're gifts from the gods that have been given to us, the chosen people, because we're dumb and can't realize that we just came back from a huge apocalypse and something happened to people. And now we're set up for it again. All right, we're doing the golden ratio fine. I started this one by request, but it was a massive learning experience for me. So thank you, and buckle up, because we're going to take you through everything. We're going to do sacred geometry, the Abrahamic religion, space force, space relativity. So here we go. What is phi? Phi is a linear association, a linear approximation of the rate of change of the Fibonacci sequence. And the Fibonacci sequence is taking each successive number and adding it to itself repeatedly. So you take 1 plus 2 equals 3, 3 plus 2 equals 5, 5 plus 3 equals 8, and you keep going up. Now, when you take the average difference between the two numbers and you map that, you get the golden ratio. 1.618 is the approximation, but just like all the good numbers, it's an irrational number, meaning the decimals go on infinitively. You never actually get the exact calculation. You could just keep going forever. And that's an important thing because all of these represent a non-linear reality, with our closest approximation being linear, but that's an important distinction. Now, where do we see phi? We see it in nature everywhere. We see it in sunflowers. We see it in hurricanes. We see it in growth specifically. We don't see it in construction. We don't see it in built structures. It's not a strong geometric shape that is produced from using this ratio, but you do see it with growth and a balanced harmony of growth where the pieces remain in balance with the whole. And now let's start breaking that down more, okay? Because what shape do we get geometrically when we represent phi? We get a pentagon. And inside of that pentagon, you can fit a pentagram, a 5-pointed star. Now, inside of that pentagram is the golden triangle, an isosceles triangle, where two of the arms are the same size, and then the shorter one is not. Now, there's an important relationship here, because if you represent the short side by x, the long sides would both equal x times phi, okay? That's the ratio that remains within the golden triangle as it scales. Now, also important thing here, the angles of the golden triangle are 36, 36, 72. If you take each of those numbers and sum them, you get 999, okay? So, somebody made fun of my drawings the other day. I don't really care. I'm done making it fancy. I'm dropping knowledge bombs on here. You can deal with it. So, you get the Space Force logo from the golden triangle, from the relationship of phi, which represents growth, okay? But before we do that one too, let's also do circular phi, because what do we get when we represent overlaid circles where the radius are a function of phi? You get, this is a terrible drawing, but you get a crescent moon. So, overlapping circles with radius of phi gives you, with radius like in relation to each other of phi, gives you a crescent moon. So a lot of, in Starry Night, in many crescent moon, it's phi is the relationship between those to map it out for artists. Now, so we have growth, we have a balance of circles, and then what do we have when we need structure? What's the strongest structure that we know of? The hexagon. So when you need growth, you have the pentagram, 999. And when you want to invert that growth, what do you get? You feel me? Okay. Now for sacred geometry, again, because this represents growth in relation to the whole. This is how populations should grow in comfortability. It does follow an exponential growth, but what you have is a balance of constraints and availability. What was the last part that I wanted to finish up on that? Where you don't see phi is just as important as where you do. You don't see phi on the micro. You don't see it at the atomic level. You don't see it at the micro. It's not represented there, not in relativity, not in waves. That's an error, I think. I think that's where we're missing some of this information. Somebody suggested earlier about light being intertwined circles at 90-degree angles. That's using phi forms the golden spiral. So we're excluding, with keeping these fields of study separate from each other. Again, light having a medium, studying more closely the behaviors and properties of the medium will allow, but this has been taken out of the textbooks through basically bribery. This is why Epstein's in the colleges and stuff. That's nothing new. They've been doing that for a long time, and they just pay the wrong answer. Okay, and they pay the wrong answer in an atheist way. So that's all this behind empty space. So it's like, again, all the applied science that had, like, we get what? We have a high, what do we have? We have a high precision and a low accuracy. So if we're at the firing range, all of our shots are together, but we're not anywhere near the right target. Fun is a dangerous thing, and fun can come in two categories. Fun can be used for good, or fun can be used for bad. And the thing about fun, and why fun is so often limited in religious settings is that fun invites those spirits that would have fun seeing you do bad, have fun themselves in you doing the bad version of whatever that thing is. But you just have to be smart about it. There's a way to do it and have fun with peace and harmony and everybody together, but everybody's got to come together and admit a little bit wrong. Some worldviews are going to get shattered, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a world outside of the cave, and it's time for everybody to come on out. Hollywood, what's the name mean and why is it important? First, the short, then the long. The short is ideas go from something that gives life, gives bread, gives knowledge, to something that takes life. That's the short. Now for the long trip. We're going to have to go from the Poconos 2026 back to biblical Jerusalem, back to early civilization and development of agriculture and human evolution. So, Poconos 2026. I'm driving for a work trip. I see one of my favorite plants on the side of the road getting ready to bud, signaling spring is coming soon, the rhododendron. Beautiful big evergreen leaves and flowers that pop with color and smell and just a beautiful indicator of new life, okay? One of my favorite. And I thought to myself, rhododendron, like what does that mean? Where's this name come from? So I look up the etymology. Rhododendron, it's Greek, it means rose tree. So it's a rose tree. Now, rose is specifically rose here, not general flower, but I want you to remember the flower connection for in a minute, okay? Then I thought to myself, well, where does Hollywood come from? Like what the holly tree, what's the Latin for it? Where do these words come from? Holly tree in Latin is ilex, okay? But ilex didn't used to describe the holly tree. Ilex used to describe a specific type of oak tree known as a holm oak. And the holm oak grew in Jerusalem during the time of Jesus, grew in this region for evidence supports back to 10 million years, okay? So we have the holm oak, which produces acorns that you can take, grind, wash the tannins from, and turn into flour to be able to bake with and make bread. And when we look at the evolution of the terminology and the mismatching of ideas and all of this, you have Hebrew oak, but general oak, not a specific tree, is Elon. Elon. Yes, Elon is Hebrew for oak. General oak, not a specific type of oak. See, that's where it gets so weird because so many times in the Bible you have specific genus of trees and types of plants and things, names, and then other places you don't. And this is, generally what I'm saying is we have a zip file that we need to decompress here and that it actually contains, see, these ideas of the families, I think they're real, right? That we have 13 families and evil bloodlines and stuff. Yes, I think that comes from a misunderstanding of what the Bible actually was supposed to represent and that there were species of plants cataloged and uses and medicines and things that have been corrupted. The meanings have been changed, names. Because again, you got to remember the Hebrew is so context dependent and ambiguous. But do you see how we have this? And there's so much more to the names in this too that because I'm going to butcher the details if I try to do the specifics. But when you go through these different types of trees, and even when you get to gopher wood for Noah, it's like we don't know what kind that is. They talk about pitch. I mean, are we talking pines? Are we talking cypress? It sounds like a way to construct an emergency shelter. Like a lot of it sounds like the ability to, and even the word for ark really means safe space. And you get what I'm saying? Like there's so much more to it that we're ignoring through all of this. The holly tree has pointy, spiky, pain in the ass leaves with berries that look delicious, but will kill you. Women are dancing in the streets of Iran today, celebrating the reports of the Ayatollah's death. Why is dancing illegal in public in the first place? Why is music sort of somewhat suppressed in Islamic culture? It's because the jinn hide their spells in the entertainment. In the music, in the movies, in the media. Epstein either was, or working for jinn, which are spiritual beings and will lead you either to good or bad. You see these stories over and over again, repeated in all different cultures. The devil didn't go down to Georgia. A jinn went down to Georgia. You see what I'm saying? And they make a deal. You look at Under the Silver Lake, when he comes in and smashes the guy's head at the end. I made all these songs. It's yes. The jinn are smarter than us. They hold sacred knowledge. They live for long times. They know what humanity's gone through. And if you make a deal to sell your soul, they'll give you the keys to popularity and put it into the music. When you hear Zeppelin played backwards, what do you think? They sold their soul to a jinn in return for riches and fame, just like Abram did. Okay? And these jinn, they'll do good, but they don't really care about us. Okay? The outcome of what happens, they don't care. but they're real, and we have to stop ignoring these things, and we have to come together and talk about what all of these actually represent. In Islam, Satan is a fallen jinn. In Christianity, Satan, Lucifer, becomes a fallen angel. Like, there's ways to use the knowledge for good and bad. The jinn are indifferent. That's what when you hear Jesus offer the mountains, that's Jesus, sell your soul. I'll give you the riches and the nations. And Jesus like, no, you don't wish. Wishes always come back to bite you. You don't wish, you work for, you plan out, you find. You have to deny the wishes and go, but this is what it's spiraling out of control. For the record, dancing, singing, music, playing instruments, highly encouraged. Selling your soul, bad idea. So you could do one without the other, but the music ends up being a gateway. And if you can't trust people to make the right decision when they get down the path, you block the path. And just casually scrolling today, I've seen a man holding a severed hand of a child during an interview in Iran. I saw Christians doing the haka in New Zealand for Jesus against the Indian Muslims there. I've seen the world is in complete chaos. Like, what are we doing? That poor child, those poor children. Like, that was a real hand of a real child that had real parents. What are we doing? You know? Polynesian culture is so rich for thousands of years. Christianity wasn't introduced until like the last 200 years. Replaced, like, what are we doing? Why?
The Michelson-Morley hypothesis was based on Maxwell's equations and theorized an absolute luminiferous ether, a still background frame through which all matter was moving. Therefore, when they go to measure the differences in speed of light in different directions as the Earth is moving through this absolute reference frame, the differences in speed of light that they measure should be Earth's absolute movement. And what were the results? Not positive. Who's the best? They weren't zero results. They did measure differences in speed, but they were so much less than theorized that they were attributed to experimental error. But in that paper from 1887, the authors make recommendations for future experimenters on how to achieve better results. Albert Michelson would go to his grave in the 1930s still believing that the ether was real, that luminiferous ether was not ruled out as a result of this experiment. Earlier experiments in the 1800s, the Fizeau experiment suggested a partially entrained ether, and the results of that experiment are from which Lorentz develops his Lorentz transformation in an ether theory. Einstein says he independently came up with the same math and gives the name to Lorentz as a node. But remember all of this too. Einstein graduates college, teaching degree, math, physics, 1900. Can't get a job as a teacher. 1902, Olympia Club, great. Gets a job at the patent office because his buddy's dad hooked him up. Then 1905, miracle year. Boom. Still can't get hired as a teacher. 1907, Einstein's still not a teacher. Minkowski comes out with space-time. 1908, Einstein gets hired as a junior teacher. 1911, Einstein makes his first prediction of what would become general relativity and how stellar aberration, how much light from a distant star is going to bend around the sun during a lunar eclipse or solar eclipse. And his first prediction aligns perfectly with Newtonian physics and a prediction that was made by a different German physicist 100 years prior. Crew set out to test this prediction in 1914. Can't get measurements, too cloudy. Had they gotten measurements, they would have disproved Einstein's theory. 1915, Einstein doubles his value in what we know today as general relativity. 1919, the Eddington experiment confirms general relativity, but they had to use backup lenses. I've done deep dives on the whole story. It's circumstantial at best. And then the person who, when Einstein is announced in the US basically for the first time, the person quoted on the, I don't know if it's front page, but quoted in the New York Times, Sir Oliver Lodge wrote extensively about the ether and how the ether was the spiritual realm and how the disciples saw Christ's etheric body rise and how he was contacting his son from World War I. These books were published before he was selected to give that quote. The theory doesn't really become accepted until into the 1930s. Einstein divorces the mother of his children, of his 3 children, to marry his cousin, first cousin on mom's side, second cousin on dad's side. His son, schizophrenic son, he never sees after he comes to the U.S. in the 1930s. He lives out the rest of his life in a Swiss insane asylum. Einstein's offered the presidency of Israel in 1952 and declines it, citing he doesn't have the aptitude for it. Like, I'd say there's room in there maybe for discussion.
Let's go from pro wrestling to Gilgamesh using bullshit. You ready? What is pro wrestling? It's blood sport. It's uniting people with a shared enemy. You're not going to see your guy win, you're going to see the bad guy lose. And throughout history, that is the most efficient way to unite people for a cause, is with a shared enemy. This is the pattern in military training. When I went through basic training, my military training instructor becomes the bad guy, the shared enemy for the trainees. And then at the end, it becomes your friend. And then you move on to a higher level shared enemy and you go from there. And it just gets moved around who the shared enemy is to control you in that fashion. And this goes back to Rome and gladiators and, again, uniting people. And the slaying of the bull in Mithraism, but it's deeper than that. This represents the domestication of humans through blood sport, but it also represents the capturing of the divine knowledge. This sacrifice of the bull, the slaying of the bull, is more than just that event. And in Gilgamesh, the heavenly bull is used as a weapon. And what comes from the bull? Bullshit. And what comes from the bullshit? Psilocybin mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, and different kinds. I'm sure there's a lot of layers and more to it even than that. But this represents the capturing and the subduing of access to divine knowledge and taking the keys away from people so that the chosen people get to hang on to it and the knowledge and the access, and then the not chosen people, well, you just go get to be slaves. I mean, that's, I am also guilty of the ganj. I have been coping with the smoking, and I have 1,000 excuses I make to myself, but I think it all comes down to intent and moderation. Are you genuinely seeking a balance, and do you have the skills and tools necessary to accomplish the job without that particular tool in your tool belt? Could you do it anyway? Are you using it as a crutch or a wheelchair, being carried? Or in the morning, I could go to work without my coffee, I could do it. I'm coping for lack of sleep with the caffeine, right? It's drug use, but it's nicer, right? I'm going to go anyway. I'm on the way. I might as well have a nice cup of coffee and enjoy it a little bit. Now, you had to know that I was going to bring it back biblically, right? Because cyanide is in apple seeds, right? Too many apple seeds, too much cyanide will kill you. Moses gets the law on cyanide. Too much law will kill you. Abraham makes a deal that his seeds will be many. Too much of anything will kill you.
Ah, yes, the Santa Claus, King of the North, keeper of presents. Watch out where those reindeer going. Don't you eat that yellow snow. Amanita muscaria, DMT elves. Don't worry, your presents will be there in the morning. Just go to sleep. I've been watching you. Go to sleep, my little darling, and don't wake up.
Santa Claus does represent the colostrum going up and down the chimney, does represent Jesus, does represent a whole lot of things all at the same time. So many places we're arguing for one definition to be true, the other one must be false, when they're both right and they both hold truths. Aunt Viv is Aunt Viv in season 3 and 4, even though she's played by different actresses. Matthew and Levi in the New Testament are said to represent the same person, right? 2 different names for the same person depending on the context. 2 different people to represent the same character depending on the context. But I got a problem with Santa Claus that we don't really talk about. We set up our kids for a fundamental misunderstanding of the universe. They're young, impressionable, trying to figure out how things interact and what's good versus bad and why should they behave. And I'll admit, I was a dorky kid at 9 years old defending my dad on the bus like, no, you wouldn't lie to me. Santa's real. I heard something come in my room. There's a note. The cookie's eaten. Ain't no way, dog. I know for sure. And it's like, oh, they were doing their best. They thought that's what's best. You can't tell your kids when they're little. They'll be the weirdo at school telling everybody else that it's wrong, and they're not going to fit in. It's a societal pressure to conform to this. When we could all agree to say it's the spirit of giving, and it represents, something else, and not a magical being that's watching you all of the time. And then you need to go to sleep before you can wake up in the garden with the tree and the presents and whatever you want. Okay.
Couldn't get the leadership in the Pentagon to look at the actual scientific data that show that there is a strong national security threat.
They were more worried about the impact on their reputation than they were about the safety of the nation.
On top of that, we were shocked to find we were getting pushback from people in the Pentagon based on their religious beliefs.
There really were religious fundamentalist extremists within the Pentagon
that had a severe adversity to this topic. These are national security experts, senior members of the national intelligence community who are putting their religion above national security. A senior DoD official actually stopped me in the hallways in the Pentagon and told me that we were doing the devil's work. I had to deal with people who were senior to me who were telling me in their world that these are demons and we are poking demons and messing in Satan's world and all these other things that to me, I was like, I can't believe this is coming out of your mouth. I'm briefing about an advanced aerospace vehicle that has been detected on multiple sensors that's absolutely there. And you're telling me that you think these are demons and that we shouldn't even look at them and study them. My mind was blown.
Water waves and sound waves are considered mechanical because the medium through which they move is considered real and physical. And light waves are considered non-mechanical because the medium through which they move is considered imaginary and virtual. The electromagnetic spectrum, what is it? The electromagnetic field, what is it made of? Nothing is made of itself through empty space. And why is a photon considered the 0 point of mass? Because it's a wave through the unentrained ether. And that ether is entrained at the atomic level with different densities that we can represent with mass. And that gravity is not the curvature of space-time, but again, these densities and how everything interacts. There's a lot to be learned. There's a lot of additional layers. I'm not claiming to have all of them, but this is definitely where we made a mistake by thinking everything is empty nothingness. And interestingly enough, sound is a longitudinal wave, light is a transverse wave, and water is a combination of the two. We don't even know who wrote down the name Jesus in the first place. The first time Jesus is used in history is as Iesus in the Old Testament translation from Hebrew into Greek, the Septuagint, before Jesus, circa 250 BC, and translated by whom? Nobody knows. Said to be 6 scholars from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, but modern scholars don't even agree on whether the tribes of Israel represent distinct groups of people. How do we not know if the tribes of Israel represent distinct groups of people or not? That's wild. And that's the first time where Old Testament Yehoshua, which means the Lord saves or the Lord is salvation, but the Old Testament also prophesizes in Isaiah that the boy will be called Emmanuel. God is with us. Not the Lord saves, God is with us. And then in the New Testament, you still have Iesus used for, it makes Jesus context dependent. Why would we recycle a name for the Lord and Savior? That makes absolutely no sense that we would just recycle a name that means that you take it from God to the Lord. Antichrist is just idol worship in many forms. The Bible says Antichrist walk then, Antichrist walk now. There's always Antichrist, always will be Antichrist. By so many theologians and scholars have pointed to the papal office, not a particular pope, but the office of the pope as being an idol that is worshipped. You know, Isaac Newton wrote more about religion than he did about physics. And that's what he said. That's what Martin Luther said. But it's just another layer to it, because there's really, when we get to it, and I know, but there's different versions of Jesus, okay? And the human version that's coming back in the flesh and is being kept by God until something, that's not it. It's finding it within. It's the spirit of truth. You don't recognize Jesus when he comes back. That's in the Bible. You know, it's just, you're not going to find it in the scripture. Every piece has its puzzle. You know, the weirdest part of this pattern recognition super ability is being able to see that nobody's going to believe me until something bad happens to me. You go, why not? But we have this weird and baked concept from propaganda, probably, or realists, I don't know, that if somebody was that smart, that intelligent, able to uncover that many things, that the evil entities would find them first and do something bad to them. That there's no way I would hear about it before them. So anybody that I hear from must be a Fed, must be controlled opposition, must be working for them. But that's, you know, a lot of them are. I don't know. But this is the propaganda. This is how it works. Turns brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor. Can't tell right from wrong, upside from down. And that's when you talk about the Messiah that's trying to be brought about, it's the end. They make you want the end, and then you bring about the end. They give you what you want. That's the whole thing is in this cycle. They think that their role is the Omega. They need to bring about the end as quickly, fastly as possible to do you a favor, because that's what you really want. So they make you want it. They force you into those decisions. They confront you with the information, and then you get to pick. The record, these videos that I just covered in the last hour on Smedley Butler, Einstein, and World's Fairs are from memory. Like, it's a curse. This isn't fun. I'm not trying to brag. I'm trying to use the gift that I was given in a positive way. And again, happy to be wrong. Would love to be wrong. I just haven't heard anybody with a more thought out explanation than I've been offering between religion, science, politics, etc. National Socialism is probably the best answer. You know, that's part of the pattern too, is they predict what would be best for the people and then associate that term with something really bad. But no one system is going to work. No set ideology that's already been thought of that could be put into place. I mean, it really all comes down to having a system that's not corrupted, which means you need to have a system that's transparent, where the goals and value are shared between the people and the corporations. Instead of a single person getting these giant checks from taxpayer money, well, it just goes back in. You just reinvest and steer the goals in the directions that you want. But, you know, communism hasn't worked, doesn't work, isn't going to work. Any country that says they are communist isn't really. It's the goal of a future state, because by definition, you can't have a communist nation. It's dissolution of the nation. No money, no rules. You just end up warring chimps at some point down the road. So that doesn't work. Jesus is the heavenly bull sent down as a weapon in Gilgamesh, is Mithras and the bull, is Ibrahim and Ishmael, is Abraham and Isaac, is the golden calf in the Moses and Aaron story, is the Alpha or the Omega. Is it the end or to just begin? It's a tool that's given to society to choose really either idol worship or embodiment. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. All of these fire god myths, wouldn't they make sense to represent angels or divine beings giving us information on how to not be afraid of the light, how to go towards the light from the fire, even with the darkness from the smoke overhead, and to harness that thing that can hurt us and use it for good? Is convincing humanity he isn't real the greatest trick that the devil could play? I don't think so. You say he, so I assume you're referring to the Christian version, which is a angel originally good in heaven and cast out by the archangel Michael for being too egotistical, wanted to be godlike or above God. So if you're that entity and you get cast out and now you're pissed and you want to steer humans away from God's will, is convincing them you're not real the greatest trick you could play? No, it would probably be convincing humans that they're capable of killing God or God's son and then tricking them into drinking the blood and worshiping that event. That would probably be worse. See what I think the stories really represent? Angels, they're all over the place. But they can't really directly intervene. They can't interject and manipulate free will. They're like National Geographic photographers watching the penguins go in the wrong direction. And just, oh no, I can't do anything about it. I think some of these stories represent a photographer who built some stairs and then got in trouble because humans doing dirty things to humans and then a direct intervention that broke the rules. That seems to be kind of the repetitive theme. And we're caught in the age of deception, so I don't know why everybody's trusting all the books we have. Also, just a reminder that Satan doesn't become an individual entity until the New Testament. It's not an individual entity within Judaism. Now, Lucifer may be. I don't know. See, that's a discussion we need to start having. But Satan is a role to be played. It's a different thing. Maybe it represents the King of Kings on the bad side. Maybe there's a title Satan that's applied to the worst of the demons, but it's not a single thing throughout history. Like, we're missing some of the concepts by doing that. Buddhism's cool, but the Eastern religions show a similar pattern of corruption of culture as well. And I mean, Buddhism kind of preaches a false balance, a complete dissolution of self, and almost communism of self, to where you completely let go of that. The Buddha renounces his noble stature and seeks happiness as a peasant, basically. Be happy as a peasant within the system. You can still participate in the system and all that, but you shouldn't chase nobility. Why not a balance? That's what I'm saying. Like, why can't you be an enlightened nobleman that actually leads the people? You get, like, it's complete. You see what I'm saying? And it sets up different cultures to be victims. Buddhists get something stolen, like, oh, too bad. So people who are thieves would benefit from promoting Buddhism. And you can see how that's why you need a balance. I'm really not worried about what happens to me after I die. I'm worried about what happens to my kids. kind of a world are we leaving for them? What kind of a life are they going to have? Death's inevitable, and nobody knows what happens for sure. Those are facts as of right now. So why would I spend this entire life worried about the afterlife? So I really don't understand every religion. So me, my soul, how I get heaven, I want light, and I want like, we don't know, but we do know for sure that our kids are going to need food and shelter and education. And like, how do we make those things good? How do we focus on that? That's why I say optimization based on total happiness hours. I'm not saying that in a hedonistic fashion, just eat, do whatever. No, I'm saying I'll go slay the dragon now. I'll eat the sadness hours so that hopefully my kid can have the happiness. I'll fight the dragon before the princess has to know it was even a real thing. That's the goal. I want my kids to grow up in a world where evil's not a thing. It's sunshine and rainbows, and struggles are, how do we work together to improve things? And it seems simple.